To the Point with your host, News Channel 5's Kelly Dunn.
It was almost 1 year ago that little Haile Brockington died when she was left in the back of a daycare van. Now, authorities are investigating a case in Homestead where the body of a 22-month-old was found inside a daycare center van. One local legislator says there is a way to reduce the chances of these deaths occurring.
Good morning and welcome to the Point. Joining me today, State Senator Maria Sachs, the Democrat from Delray Beach, and we thank you very much for your time and for coming in.
Thank you, Kelly.
You have a proposal. It's called Haile Brockington Law, Brockington's Law, named in memory of the 2-year-old we were just mentioning in Delray Beach. Explain how this would work if it does indeed become a law in Florida.
Well, it's very simple. The idea is that when infants are being transported in a commercial vehicle, this doesn't relate to personal vehicles. These are commercial vehicles that transport many infants from a home to a child care center and back again to the home. That these vehicles need to be equipped with a safety device. The safety device is a little button in the back of the van, and it forces the driver to walk to the back of the van and push the button. And the reason it's a good idea is that once they walk to the back of the van, they're able to see if there's any children left in the very back that they've forgotten about. And it's not intentional.
Last year, the bill that would require these alarms did pass the Senate, but it failed in the House. First of all, why? It seems like some common sense legislation. But secondly, what are your hopes this time around?
When I was there at the daycare center, and I was standing there with the mom, I committed to making sure that I could do everything possible to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I filed the bill, I was committed to it, passed every committee in the Senate, passed unanimously in the Senate chamber. I think in the House of Representatives, I really do think that maybe politics got in the way. So I'm going to make sure that this session, that doesn't happen.
Palm Beach County Commissioners have given initial approval to the alarm plan. It was just a few days ago. Do you see other counties that might be, agreeing and doing the same thing?
I'm so proud to be from Palm Beach County because our county commission did what our state legislature failed to do. So I am reaching out. I've sent a letter to every county commission in the state asking them to do the same thing so that maybe voluntarily every county can go ahead and require some kind of safety device in these child care vans.
And how do we stack up with other states on this issue or with other, other counties in Florida? I mean, is this unique to this part, South Florida, or is this something everyone's dealing with these days?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's an area of Florida that hasn't lost a child in the summer. In fact, on an average, we lose 5 infants a year from being negligently left in a child care van. Well, there's a way to stop it, and the state needs to do it.
And you've sent letters to thousands of daycare centers asking them to do this voluntarily. What has the feedback been?
It's been excellent. There's 16,892 child care centers in the state. And I figured that that we failed to pass it in the state legislature. So let's try to see if giving the information to the child care centers, if they would go ahead and do it voluntarily. The response has been overwhelming. Many responses have said, we've already done it, or we want to do it. Some of them had said, if you mandate this, it would be easier for us with our insurance.
Oh, I was just going to say, because if so many are excited about the idea, why would you need to legislate it? But is that why? It all comes down to money?
It all comes down to money. And you know what? I can see their point. If we have a law requiring it, then those child care centers who are operating as small businesses, and there are many, would give a little bit of a help. This law would give them a little bit of a help to get some kind of restitution back, some kind of forgiveness from the insurance companies. And so many times, Kelly, these children are lost in daycare vans that transport many infants. Not so they're large, and it's usually in areas of low economic, low economic areas, so that it's really, those are the people that we really need to reach out and help.
And I'm sure those daycare providers, because they probably serve the poorest in the community, don't have that extra money to kind of put towards this. But, I mean, how much are we looking at a cost anyway?
Well, it's not that much. It's anywhere between $80 to $200, depending on the complexity of the alarm that you get. And as I said to one child care center, the cost of this is so little compared to the cost of losing a child. It really seems to me something that if they don't do it voluntarily, that the state needs to step in and make sure that every child is protected, no matter where they live in Florida.
Fire investigators reported the daycare centers they're inspected quarterly. The vans, though, at those daycare centers are inspected once a year. Should that be something else that changes, or would that have helped if these vans are inspected more often?
It's not necessarily in the operation of the van mechanically. It's more in the fact that the rules that we have set up so far are just a manual checklist. And so many times an operator will negligently leave the little one in the back, the quiet 18-month-old or the little 6-month-old who falls asleep, doesn't see the child. And they're the ones who are usually left to die in the van.
In general, are daycare centers in Florida regulated enough, in your opinion?
I think they are. I don't think we need more regulation. But you know what? We're in the 21st century. If you leave your phone somewhere, you can find it. There are technological advances that help us in every area of our life. The reason why we are not using our technological advances to make sure that our infants are safe, to me, is not a good policy. So I am sure that this year in the Florida House, they're going to turn their policy around and take a look at it. We're going to get it passed.
Especially, we're dealing with such a heat wave across the country. It seems even more important than ever that something like this, not just in Florida, but everywhere, to protect children.
Exactly. And the way I look at it is this. These are private vans, commercial vans, but they are paid by the state. So when the state takes someone into their custody, into their service, whether it's an infant, whether it's a teenager in a detention center, whether it's an elderly person in a retirement or a nursing home, we need to give them the very best protection. That's what I hope that we can do for the infants, as well as for the teenagers and for our seniors. That's what I'm committed to.
And that's what's behind the Haile Brockington law.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, State Senator Maria Sachs, for being with us. And
thank you.
We'll follow the progress.
I hope so. I hope I can come back and say that we've got a winner, and that the Haile Brockington bill has now become the Haile Brockington law.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Kelly.
Coming up next, our roundtable looks at the verbal brawl involving 2 members of Congress from South Florida. Now it's time for our roundtable, and joining me is Brian Crowley with CrowleyPoliticalReport.com and George Bennett, a political reporter with the Palm Beach Post. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming in. Let's talk about this, the congressional fight getting national attention. It began with what appeared to be a political jab by Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz and turned into a political brawl with former South Florida Representative, or fellow rather, South Florida Representative Allen West. It started with the Democrats' comments about the budget and West.
Gentleman from Florida who represents thousands of Medicare beneficiaries, as do I, is supportive of this plan that would increase costs for Medicare beneficiaries. Unbelievable from a member from South Florida.
The Republican, Allen West, responded in writing, saying, "You are the most vile, unprofessional, and despicable member of the U.S. House of Representatives. If you have something to say to me, stop being a coward and say it to my face. Otherwise, shut the heck up."
Continue to see her do is sometimes when she sees the targets of opportunity, take these shots at me.
I would appreciate his apology, and I would hope that he would reconsider his ill-advised position on increasing costs for Medicare beneficiaries.
So what do you think?
Well, you know, what Congressman Wasserman Schultz said on the floor was pretty much in line with the kind of dialogue that we've been seeing for weeks and months now between both sides and the Republicans and the Democrats over these issues that people feel very passionate about. And frankly, what she said in that context was pretty mild as politics goes. The reaction from Congressman West was so over the top. It was very surprising, and it really raises some questions about his demeanor as a congressman. I mean, this was not the kind of thing that should have generated that kind of a reaction, even though, as George knows, the two of them have do not get along.
Yeah, they do have a history. I mean, you know, I'm not going to address the demeanor thing, but they do have. I mean, it was not this event. This was the culmination of, you know, months that they've been at odds going back to the campaign. And, you know, Alan West defeated Ron Klein, who's a good friend of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and then she campaigned, led a protest outside West's campaign office. Whether that justifies it or not, I don't know, but there has been this history where she's been under his skin for a long time. So this was kind of the, you know, he reached the boiling point, I guess.
Well, it didn't just stay, you know, within the confines of the Capitol building. I mean, this is all over. So does this hurt West?
Well, I mean,
long term?
It was also odd that he decided that he needed to also send this email to the House Majority Leader and the House Minority Leader. It was a little bit like telling Mom and Dad that my sister has been picking on me. I just find this reaction extreme, and I don't know whether it's out of character for Congressman West, but it just, I mean, where would you go if what she had said had been a little more aggressive? I just find the reaction odd.
I think ultimately, I mean, you know, during the campaign against Klein, he had a similar thing on his campaign blog about Ron Klein. I think he might have used, he used the word vile a lot. And, you know, ultimately, I don't think this will be a defining issue one way or another. I mean, you know, other things will play into it.
Well, Medicare, I mean, in Florida, though, I mean, that's certainly a defining issue, isn't it, for...
Well, I mean, you also have to be careful. You can do a lot of things in Congress, and members have that can be out there and be very aggressive. But you also have to be careful that you don't go so far that your own colleagues and your own party start to feel uncomfortable with what you might say or do, if they start to think that you're a little out of control. And I think that this reaction came almost immediately after her remarks, and while they can vigorously disagree on this issue, and they do, the reaction just seems over the top.
And he's unapologetic for it, and so, I mean, we'll see. It could end up in a campaign ad in the not-too-distant future, a little
Well, they both tried to raise money. Within hours, they were both sending out information, trying to raise money, and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee had something out right away saying you needed to send us money to help stop Alan West. So, and Alan West sent out an email to his supporters asking for an extra $25 to help him beat back people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So
does this have legs? I mean, does this help them, you know, and will this be, you know, they'll refer back to this fight for a while?
They'll refer back to it, but I mean, and you know, now he's a congressman, but you know, when he was a candidate, they brought up a lot of things about his demeanor and stuff he said. I mean, he said a lot of controversial things. I mean, ultimately, the election last year ended up being about other stuff. I suspect a year from now, the economy, Medicare, whatever, you know, are going to define the election. But yeah, you'll be hearing more about it.
Well, and I should add that a lot of his strongest supporters are cheering him on with what he said. They loathe Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They loathe what she stands for, and a lot of the reaction he got was positive to what he said from his.
They're both very
supporters.
Polarizing figures, no question.
All right. Well, coming up next, a shakeup in the Senate race. Who does this benefit? There's been a big shakeup in the race for the U.S. Senate. One of the early frontrunners in the Republican primary is the first to drop out.
Today, I'm announcing that I will no longer be a candidate for the United States Senate, nor will I seek any office this year or next. Instead, I am rededicating myself to finishing the job you sent me to do here in Florida.
Senate President Mike Haradopoulos making his video announcement that he is withdrawing from the race. The two leading contenders are both from South Florida, Adam Hasner and George Lemieux. Who do you think will benefit from Haradopoulos leaving?
I don't know who benefits more ultimately, but I think Hasner has a big opportunity in that he has always wanted this race to be a reprise of 2010 of Marco Rubio versus Charlie Crist. And so now he's got basically a one-on-one where he's the Rubio character and Lemieux, the former confidant of Charlie Crist, is in the Charlie Crist role. That's the way Hasner wants the race to be. So right now he has got the opportunity, at least, to try to make it the kind of race that he wanted.
What do you think, Brian?
I mean, I think George is right that this is a big opportunity for Adam Hasner to create that kind of race. He's going to have to quickly capitalize on this. I think that, you know, let me just remark that the reason Herodopoulos got out of the race, many people believe, is because he's going to be facing a deposition in August involving the Jim Greer case, the former party chairman of the state party. And there are many who believe that that is not going to be a pleasant experience for Herodopoulos in this criminal investigation that's going on involving Jim Greer. So there's a lot of speculation that that's the reason he dropped out. His official reason was he suddenly discovered that being Senate president and a candidate was a little too hard to do, which is a bizarre thing to say.
He faced some big problems in the primary, in a Republican primary. I mean, he had that embarrassing radio interview where a conservative host kicked him off the show because he wouldn't answer whether he was for the Ryan budget or not, and then later he came out against the Ryan budget, which in a Republican primary would probably hurt him. And then also, you know, hardliners on immigration, which is a big share of Republican primary voters, were upset with him over the way that immigration bill failed in the state Senate. So he had some problems, you know, as a candidate getting out of the primary, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, Hasner has worked very hard at trying to attract the Tea Party vote and the hard conservative vote. And Lemieux is stuck with that patina of Charlie Crist. And as much as he tries to distance himself from Charlie Crist, he was joined at the hip with Crist for too many years as his chief of staff and his campaign manager, and as Charlie Crist described him, his maestro. So it's not been easy for George Lemieux to separate himself from Charlie Crist, and it becomes really important in the Republican primary where many of the voter turnout will be low. The voters that are in that primary will be very hardcore conservatives, and they are very suspect of George Lemieux, don't you think?
That is true. I mean, Lemieux does have good establishment ties in Washington. He had a number of senators helping him raise money, so he's going to have a big, you know, money is very important. He's going to have, he's been able to raise money. And also, I mean, during the 16 months that he was in the Senate, you know, he did have a pretty conservative record and kind of distanced himself from Crist in that. So, you know, but I agree. I mean, Crist is kind of the defining thing. Or at least a lot of his opponents would like to make it that way.
It's sort of interesting in a way. Charlie Crist, long gone from the Republican Party, is still influencing Republican Party politics.
Yeah, I was just going to say, he's going to be on the campaign trail for who, maybe?
Yeah.
We'll see. Well, a quick note, Senator Herodopoulos is set to be on To the Point next week, and then George Lemieux is scheduled the following week. So we'll get some of our questions and hear more directly from the former candidate and the candidate himself. All right, we'll be back to wrap it up with more in a moment. While they're all starting to come to Florida, or at least make their plans to be in Florida, those who are running for the presidency.
Well, in 2 months, at the end of September, we're going to have the Republican State Party convention, and most of the presidential candidates have committed to at least showing up. The P5, as they like to call it, because it's their 5th convention. They'll have a straw ballot. Mitt Romney has said he's not interested in participating in any straw ballots, including the one in Ames, Iowa. But all of the candidates will be there. The straw ballot will happen anyway. They're all going to at least speak, and there's also a CPAC event that same weekend and a debate that they will all attend. And I think we're going to see over the next couple of months a lot more interest in Florida among these presidential contenders.
No question, yeah. And yeah, the straw poll, I mean, there's the straw poll itself and then the whole spin factor of, you know, who didn't participate and who really gained and all that. So keeps people like us busy, so that'll be fun.
Exactly.
And a Tea Party debate that'll be held in
there's
Daytona
a Tea Party
Beach.
debate being scheduled for November for the U.S. Senate candidates who, according to the Tea Party of Florida, have all agreed to be there. And it's supposed to be in Daytona Beach in November. And one of a series of debates as we begin figuring out who's going to be the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate.
What did you think about all the hubbub about Michelle Bachmann and the migraine issue and all of that's been coming up?
I mean, personally, I think it's much ado about nothing. I mean, I know people, there's a friend of both of ours who worked at Palm Beach Post who suffered almost daily from migraine headaches, and as best I could tell, she was able to function nearly every day. I do think it's silly that I have seen some women try to turn this question about migraine headaches into some sort of a sexist issue. I think that's silly, but you know, she missed a few votes in Congress because she had a migraine headache. Doesn't really mean a lot to me. And if for some reason she became president and was so incapacitated she couldn't do her job, that's what the vice president's paid for.
There you go.
George?
Yeah.
Anything to say about that?
Yeah, I guess it's a sign she's a serious candidate if people are paying attention to stuff like that. That's what I drew out of it. But yeah,
I think she's going to be a very serious Florida candidate in the Florida primary when the Florida primary is in March.
She got a good reception down here a couple months ago.
Very good reception, and as we were talking about earlier, the very conservative voters that will show up for a primary, they're ideal for a candidate like Michelle Bachmann.
They're never at a loss for topics or have some comments or some commentary. Thank you very much for joining us today, Brian Crowley, and thank you very much for joining us. I think every week we come up with new, interesting topics, like we were talking about with the Wasserman Schultz and the Allen West brawl. We'll see what happens for next week on To the Point. Thank you for joining us. Have a good Sunday.